The Public International Law and Policy Group has released an analysis explaining the legal basis underpinning Ukraine's 10-point peace formula for long-lasting peace and stability in the region. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky announced this formula in October 2022 during a summit of G7 leaders. The 10 points of the peace formula comprehensively address the issues that have arisen during Russia's full-scale invasion, including nuclear security, territorial integrity, return of prisoners of war and other forcibly displaced Ukrainians, and accountability for perpetrators of atrocity crimes. PLPG's legal analysis examines each of the 10 points, provides background on their importance for Ukraine's and the entire region's security and stability, and explains how Russia has threatened this security. The analysis then overviews the legal framework for each of the points, highlighting the peace formula's consistency with international law. The peace formula calls for upholding radiation and nuclear safety and environmental protection, which is consistent with principles of international humanitarian and human rights law. These principles provide special protections for nuclear sites, dams, and dikes. Other points of the peace formula deal with Ukraine's territorial integrity, withdrawal of Russian troops, and prevention of escalation. These points are all supported by clear international norms on sovereignty and territorial integrity. Use of force against other states is illegal under international law and may amount to an act of aggression if not exercised in self-defense or upon authorization of the UN Security Council. As such, these points in the peace formula are in line with international law. Human rights and humanitarian law standards likewise support Ukraine's calls for the protection of energy infrastructure, food security, and the release of all prisoners of war and civilian detainees. Civilian objects generally cannot be targeted during military operations, and all civilians and civilian objects must be protected to avoid human suffering. Geneva Conventions also provide that all combatants must be released after hostilities. States parties to the Geneva Conventions are under an explicit obligation to search for, prosecute, and punish perpetrators of war crimes committed during international armed conflicts. Additionally, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the European Convention on Human Rights require their states parties to provide effective remedies to victims of human rights violations. This means that Ukraine is within its rights to call for justice for Russia's atrocity crimes and take steps to begin accountability processes. Along with justice, the peace formula also calls for Russia to make reparation to Ukraine. According to international legal precedent, any illegal act creates an obligation to make reparation, re-establishing the situation that would have existed without the commission of the illegal act. A similar requirement is reflected in various legal instruments, such as the International Law Commission's articles on the responsibility of states for internationally wrongful acts, and the Geneva Conventions. PLPG's legal briefer looks at all of the points and corresponding legal basis in further depth. To learn more about the international law framework for Ukraine's peace formula, see the full PLPG analysis.